Few Gold Rush stars have ever captured audiences quite like Tony Beets, the bold Dutch-born miner who famously turned Yukon mud into millions. Yet lately, fans everywhere can't stop asking one urgent question: what really happened to him? Over the years, fiery controversies that landed him in court and wild internet rumors claiming he was sentenced to life in prison have swirled together, turning Tony's public image into a tangled mix of fact, fiction, and pure chaos. So how did one of TV's toughest and most determined miners end up at the center of so much speculation? Stick around, because the truth about Tony Beets might surprise you more than you expect. Tony Beets' story begins on December 15, 1959, in the Netherlands. Born to Klaus and Magda Beets, Tony spent his earliest years in the small village of White Deans. Life on the family farm taught him two important things early on: hard work and a deep love for heavy machinery. When he was just 7 years old, his family relocated to Bergwoord in Friesland, but life there quickly became difficult. After his father suffered a serious accident, young Tony was forced to step up and take over most of the farm duties. That responsibility shaped him, building an unusual level of grit, confidence, and maturity that would follow him into adulthood and prepare him for every challenge ahead. Even though he came from generations of farmers, Tony never saw farming as his final destination. By his early 20s, he was restless and craving change. At age 23, he and his girlfriend Minnie, who would later become his wife, made a bold decision to start over in a new country. With only $300 in their pockets and not a single word of English, they left the Netherlands and headed for Canada, landing in British Columbia. It was a frightening leap of faith, and survival meant hustling from the very first day. Tony's first job was milking cows in Salmon Arm for $4 an hour, but the pay wasn't enough to support their fresh start. He quickly switched to construction work and, within just a week, earned a promotion to foreman, proof of how naturally he adapted, learned, and led. Over time, he mastered heavy machinery and even worked on oil pipelines, gaining the experience that would one day define his entire career. Meanwhile, Minnie worked tirelessly in retail, healthcare, and food service, doing everything she could to keep their dream alive. Then came a rumor that would change their future forever. Word began to spread about workers up in the Yukon earning more than $1,000 a week mining gold. For Tony, that was all the motivation he needed. In March 1981, he packed up and headed straight for Dawson City. But when he arrived, he realized he was too early. The gold season hadn't begun. With no jobs available, he returned to British Columbia to keep working the oil fields. But that Yukon dream stayed with him. 3 years later, in 1984, opportunity finally arrived. A mining company contacted him with a job offer in the Yukon, and Tony didn't hesitate. He started small, operating heavy machinery at the Tamarack mines, the very same mines he would eventually own someday. That moment marked the beginning of everything. Before long, Tony launched his own mining company, Tamarack Incorporated, in the Dawson district. Through relentless hard work, perseverance, and a little luck, it grew into one of the largest privately owned placer gold mining operations in the entire Yukon Territory. But success never came easy. With only 7 months of workable weather each year, Tony and his crew pushed through brutal conditions, grinding through 12 to 14-hour workdays, equipment breakdowns, freezing temperatures, and constant pressure. His philosophy was simple: gold mining only works if you show up every single day to make it happen. He understood better than anyone that even a full season of hard work could be completely erased by bad luck. 1 year could make you rich, and the next could take everything away. Because of that, he always leaned on his team, and especially his family. Minnie became the backbone of their entire operation, handling the bookkeeping and financial decisions with sharp discipline. She was often the only one who could stop Tony from jumping into a risky investment. Their children, Monica, Kevin, Mike, and Bianca, eventually joined the family business. Tony admitted he was harder on them than anyone else, but he always paid them fairly and taught them the true meaning of work. Despite the long hours, they returned every season. And when mining wrapped up each year, the family traveled together, giving Tony rare time to switch from being the boss to simply being a dad. With his family supporting him, Tony expanded even more. He secured his first major claim at Paradise Hill, followed by new claims at Indian River and Clear Creek. His ambitions didn't stop there. He went on to restore 2 massive historic gold dredgers, giant machines capable of processing immense volumes of earth. These dredges would eventually become one of the defining chapters of his entire gold rush career. Tony's rise to TV fame truly began in Season 2 of Discovery Channel's hit series Gold Rush. His tough, no-nonsense style instantly made him stand out. That season, the show's main figure, Todd Hoffman, struggling to keep his mining dream alive, turned to Tony for guidance. For those unfamiliar, Gold Rush, originally titled Gold Rush, Alaska in its first season, follows several family-run mining crews as they chase fortune across Alaska and Canada. The show debuted in December 2010, focusing on 6 men from Oregon who had lost their jobs and gambled everything on gold mining in Porcupine Creek, Alaska. The catch: none of them really knew what they were doing. With cameras rolling, they learned the industry the hard way, through trial, error, and constant frustration. Todd Hoffman led the crew, but he was buried in problems from the beginning. His biggest headache was his wash plant, a crucial piece of equipment that kept breaking down and destroying their productivity. Their mechanic, James Hears, barely kept it alive. Todd eventually brought in Dave Turin, a seasoned professional who had worked in his family's quarry, to help stabilize the mess. But the season was overflowing with drama. When mining expert Dakota Fred Hurt entered the picture mid-season, tensions erupted. At one point, a confrontation escalated into a full-blown physical fight on camera. Still, despite the chaos, the Hoffman crew ended the season with 14.64 ounces of gold, just enough to prove the dream was possible and secure a second season. That's when Tony Beets made his first appearance, in an episode titled Drill or Die. Although his role was small, he made a lasting impression. With Todd's operation falling apart, Tony delivered one crucial piece of advice: test drill before mining. Todd's crew was losing faith in his leadership, so Tony's guidance essentially saved the day. By then, Tony already had a reputation as one of the Klondike's most successful and respected miners, and people listened when he spoke. What most expected to be a one-time appearance quickly became something much bigger. Tony returned multiple times, often acting as a mentor to young miner Parker Schnobel during Parker's first independent season. By season 4, Tony had become a full-fledged cast member, giving audiences an inside look at his operation at Paradise Hill. This area, located in the heart of the Yukon's legendary Klondike region, the same place that sparked the original late 1800s gold rush, became one of the show's most iconic mining locations. To this day, Tony and his family are still pulling gold from that ground. One of Tony's biggest power moves came during Season 4 in August 2013 when he leased his Scribner Creek claim to Parker Schnobel. That decision changed everything. Parker managed to pull in an astonishing 1,029 ounces of gold, shattering Todd Hoffman's previous record of 803 ounces. Ironically, even though Tony was a seasoned miner long before joining the show, his early seasons were challenging. He struggled to keep up with the on-screen competition, but in true Tony fashion, he never backed down. Then came Season 5, a turning point that sent his entire storyline in a wild new direction. Instead of sticking with the usual wash plant setup, Tony went all in on a groundbreaking idea. He purchased a massive 75-year-old gold dredge and set out to restore it. This wasn't just any old machine. It was a historic piece of Klondike mining equipment from the original gold rush era. For Tony, the dredge wasn't about nostalgia, it was strategy. He believed that old-school, large-scale mining techniques could still outperform modern machinery. The project perfectly reflected his go big or go home mentality. But reviving a machine of that magnitude wasn't easy. The restoration quickly became one of the most ambitious projects ever featured on Gold Rush. The challenges were endless: mechanical failures, brutal weather, transportation problems, and constant safety concerns. Still, Tony pushed through every obstacle. Between rebuilding the dredge and running operations at Paradise Hill, he worked non-stop with his trademark determination. Although the dredge wasn't fully operational by the end of Season 5, the foundation had been laid. The crew's hard work paved the way for its dramatic debut in later seasons. It stood as a perfect example of Tony's vision, his willingness to take a massive risk on a piece of mining history and turn it into a modern gold-producing powerhouse. That fearless mindset is exactly why fans continue to call him the Viking of the Yukon. In 2014, that legendary Viking spirit Tony and his crew loved to joke about led them straight into serious trouble. While filming Gold Rush, the Tamarack team decided to perform what they jokingly called a Viking baptism for their dredge, hoping the ritual would somehow turn their luck around. Their method was extreme and reckless. They poured gasoline into a pond and then set the entire surface on fire. As the flames roared upward, Tony stood nearby watching the spectacle, fully embracing the chaos unfolding in front of him. When the episode finally aired in 2015, controversy erupted almost immediately. Viewers were stunned by what they saw, but more importantly, the Yukon government was not amused. Officials charged Tony, his company, and members of his crew with violating the Yukon Water Act by depositing waste into a water management area and failing to report the incident. A welder named Mark Favren pleaded guilty to one count and paid a small fine. But that was only the beginning. Prosecutors pushed for a much larger penalty, more than $30,000, arguing that Tamarack Incorporated should also face accountability. During a tense hearing in Whitehorse, footage from the show was played in court as evidence. In the video, Favren could be seen dumping gasoline into the pond before lighting it on fire, with Tony standing by and watching it all happen. Yukon's chief mining inspector, Robert Savord, testified that his office learned about the incident only after receiving a complaint from Environment Canada, which then triggered a full investigation. Favren tried to defend himself by saying he didn't realize he was being filmed and that the entire act was spontaneous, done for fun, and while he was supposedly off the clock. But Judge Peter Chisholm wasn't persuaded. He made it clear that Tony could have stopped the stunt but didn't, and that by allowing the crew to film the moment, Tony ultimately made himself responsible. The court even pointed out that the publicity generated by the show benefited Tony and criticized him for showing little remorse. After the case, Tony admitted he should have known better. He acknowledged that as the man in charge, he should have stopped the act before it happened. In the end, he accepted the fine and described the entire ordeal as a joke that spiraled far beyond what anyone expected. What surprised many fans was discovering that the fire was actually real. A large number of viewers believed it was just an exaggerated TV stunt, until news broke that Tony and his team had been officially found guilty in court. By the time Gold Rush returned for its 12th season in September 2021, Tony was fired up and determined to prove something. He set a massive goal for himself, 9,000 ounces of gold. To make that happen, Tony went all in, investing an eye-watering $5 million into a brand-new fleet of heavy-duty mining machines so he could reopen his Indian River operation. At the same time, he kept his Paradise Hill claim running around the clock, 24 hours a day, non-stop. Then came a devastating curveball. Tony didn't have a valid water license for Indian River, and he knew this was a major problem. After his previous clashes with the government, especially the Viking baptism fiasco, he wasn't looking to stir up more trouble. So, with cameras rolling, Tony tried to push the paperwork through and finally get approval to mine one of the richest gold areas in the Yukon. One of the season's most tense moments came when Tony walked into the office to check whether his license had been approved. His crew sat in silence as they waited. When he returned, his expression said everything. The application had been rejected. He would have to start over and resubmit the entire thing. Anyone familiar with government bureaucracy knows what that meant: months of waiting. And for a miner racing against the clock, every month lost meant money lost. It was a crushing setback. Tony had already invested millions preparing for Indian River, and now everything sat idle. When he later broke the news to his family, his frustration was obvious. He admitted that no other claim could match Indian River's potential, calling it the family's piggy bank. Still, Tony and his team didn't walk away empty-handed. By the end of the week, they weighed in over 227 ounces of gold, worth more than $400,000. It wasn't enough to cover the losses, but it showed that the Beets family wasn't giving up without a fight. That's the reality of gold mining: huge risks, massive investments, and zero guarantees. And, as always, Tony handled it with his usual grit. When one door slammed shut, he simply moved on to the next. Fast forward to season 13, and Tony Beets returned with the same unstoppable determination, this time chasing another enormous target: 5,000 ounces of gold. He battled aging machinery, unpredictable Klondike weather, and the pressure of running multiple cuts across Paradise Hill. But chaos is where Tony thrives. One of his smartest decisions that season was bringing his iconic Kiwi wash plant back into action. Instead of letting it sit unused, Tony leased it to Shane at Dominion Creek, a move that turned idle equipment into profit while helping smaller miners improve their own yields. Yet the season was anything but smooth. The team battled equipment breakdowns, hydraulic leaks, shredded conveyor belts, and constant supply chain delays. But Tony's hands-on leadership, along with the efforts of his children, Kevin, Monica, and Mike, kept things moving. His kids handled logistics, solved problems, and showed they were ready to carry on the Beets legacy. When equipment failures threatened production, Tony made another bold move. He revived the long-neglected Moose Creek trommel, a wash plant that had been sitting unused for multiple seasons. Once repaired, It became essential in keeping gold production steady during a critical period. That moment captured Tony's mining philosophy perfectly. Adapt quickly, use every resource, and never let broken equipment stop progress. Despite all the obstacles, the Beets family finished the season strong, hauling in more than 4,600 ounces of gold, worth over $7 million. It wasn't just success, it was a testament to their relentless work ethic. Running operations non-stop, expanding into new cuts like 80 Pup, and constantly improving their equipment paid off massively. But Tony wasn't done building his empire. He leased land to the Winchester crew, a team of rookie miners working the Hunker Cut. Acting as both landlord and mentor, Tony guided them through the season. With his support, the newcomers hit their 200-ounce goal, a proud moment that showed how far Tony's influence had reached. He wasn't just mining gold anymore, he was shaping the next generation of Klondike miners. Still, controversy has always seemed to follow him. In April 2025, an outrageous rumor began spreading online, claiming that Tony and Mike Beets had been sentenced to life in prison. The claim exploded across YouTube and TikTok. One video titled Tony Beets and Mike Beets from Gold Rush Sentenced to Life Imprisonment was posted on April 2, 2025, and quickly racked up more than 210,000 views. Another similar video appeared just a week later. Some fans believed the lies instantly, while others scrambled to find proof. But the truth was simple, none of it was real. There were no arrests, no convictions, and definitely no life sentences. The entire story was a viral hoax created to farm views, likes, and shares. Fact-checkers like Snopes confirmed that no credible news source reported any legal trouble for the Beets family. The confusion likely came from Tony's real legal troubles in the past, specifically his violation of the Yukon Waters Act during the gasoline and fire incident. It was dramatic, yes, but it resulted in fines and cleanup costs, not jail time. Despite the controversy, Tony kept working and never spent a single day in prison. Adding to Tony's complicated public image is his long, rocky history with fellow miner Parker Schnobel. Their relationship began strong, with Tony mentoring young Parker as he took over his family's Big Nugget mine. But once business entered the picture, the friendship fell apart. Tony leased land to Parker, but the royalty structure hidden within the deal caused massive tension. The more gold Parker dug up, the less he got to keep. By season 9, Parker was fed up. He explained on the show that after 6,000 ounces, he owed Tony 25% in royalties. On an 8,000-ounce season, that meant nearly $2 million straight into Tony's pocket. Parker had already ended an earlier season early just to avoid paying more royalties and refused to repeat that mistake. When Tony declined to renegotiate, Parker's crew found a loophole, switching wash plants every 500-ounce haul. By rotating equipment, they reduced the royalties owed and effectively beat Tony's system. When Tony discovered this, he was furious. Things escalated further when Parker's team began moving gold-rich dirt from leased land to their own claim. Tony stormed onto the site, shut down Parker's wash plant, and cut the power. Angry words were exchanged. Parker accused Tony of greed, while Tony insisted the contract was the contract. Their partnership ended right there, turning into one of Gold Rush's most intense rivalries. Meanwhile, Parker also faced his own off-screen problems, including allegations from former employees and claims that some of the show's dramatic moments were staged. Another miner, Todd Hoffman, also faced backlash when Park County residents sued over noise and disruption caused by his mining operations. Even though the show brought economic benefits, the community eventually won the case, forcing the crew to shut down and leave, something that may have contributed to Hoffman's departure from the series. So where did all these Tony Beets arrested videos come from? Experts say most of them were created using AI-generated misinformation, mixing real facts, like Tony's environmental charges, with completely fabricated details. The tactic is common. Reality TV stars like Parker Schnobel, Mike Wolfe from American Pickers, and Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars have all been targeted by similar hoaxes claiming they were sentenced to prison. The pattern is always the same. Take a tiny bit of truth, twist it into something sensational, and watch it go viral. In the end, none of these claims hold up under real scrutiny. Tony Beets remains one of the toughest, most determined miners in the Klondike, still working, still mentoring, and still building a legacy. No life sentence, no hidden arrest, just a man navigating the highs and lows of a brutally demanding industry.